And hello, everyone, and to our Wednesday night webinar. John, Grayson, Stacey, Conroy, Patrick, McGrath, whole crew is here tonight. With the holidays being there, things thrown off a bit, so we're going to do it this way. John, Stacey, how are you?
My internet's good. You're breaking up horribly.
Yeah, you're not doing very well. You're breaking up.
It might be Stacey and me without you.
Yeah, because you sound like this, and we're getting every.
All right. I will work on this.
Okay.
Can you hear us clearly? Stupid question when he can't answer.
Oh yeah, and he left. So
He left. That's good. So I'm making the assumption that people can hear us. So if somebody online could just text that, hey, I see Stacey and John and wondering where Patrick is, that would be great.
Yeah, and that you can hear us. I'm hearing some yeses. I'm
Okay,
seeing
I
some
see
yeses.
it. Okay.
Yes.
There
yes,
we
sir.
go.
Yep. Okay,
So Patrick, thank you. Okay, so
Can you hear me
Patrick's
now?
gonna be
Is that
invisible.
better?
Oh, there you are.
Okay.
We can hear you now.
All
Yes.
right. There we go. All right. I think we're better now. Okay. Good.
Okay.
Hi. Sorry about that. My apologies. Yes, I could hear you guys. I just couldn't communicate well. So. All right. So Stacey and I always talk about OCD and substance use, John. That's kind of our
Okay.
thing, and we are the SIG leaders for that. And you and I talk about a little bit of everything. And so tonight it's going to be all of the above is what we'll have some fun with. Feel free, everyone. Since it's three of us, I think tonight maybe we should just be goofy. And why doesn't each
Wait.
person?
How's that different than what you and I always do?
Yeah. I was gonna say, and the difference would be.
What? Well, normally I just kind of go down the line of questions, but I'm wondering if you happen to find one that's just exciting, throw it out there, and we'll jump to it. I kind of like the
Me too.
very
I know what you're
first
going
one.
to say. I love it.
Yeah.
I love
All right.
that first one.
I do too. So why don't we do it? Let's read it. Hi. What is the solution for agnostics to overcome the fear of possible hell? And what if I am wrong? I have feelings like the whole eternity may be at stake, and I can't let it be, but I can't believe as well.
I'll be happy to jump in unless you want to.
Jump in, John.
You know, so you are bringing up a very realistic problem, and the answer, you're going to hate the answer, but it is the only answer, I believe, which is you don't get to know. I mean, as you know, we're always pushing learning to live with uncertainty. So, yep, there might be a hell to which you're damned.
Yep.
And there might not be. And
right.
To make it more complicated, since my screen went blank, can you hear? Oh shit! Really?
Sorry, I put the light on. It got a little dark in here all of a sudden. Sorry.
Okay. We're a little dark. My whole computer went black though.
Oh, that's weird. Okay.
Oh yeah, it thought my camera was unplugged.
Oh, yes, we still hear you, John. Just so you know.
We hear you, but we don't see you.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
So
Patrick, I'm just going to blame you.
Yeah. I was bouncy. I am in your state tonight, John, and the internet was bouncy. Maybe it's a whole California thing. Who knows? But we'll never know. I'll pick up where John was. You know, as John was saying, and Stacey, with your lived experience, I think you, of course, will have amazing things to say on this as well. But there is, of course, no way for us to truly know what happens in an afterlife or if there even is one. Many religions will tell us that there is, and people who tell us that there are take it on faith that there is something, but there's a difference between taking something on faith and doing something different, right? Which is knowing 100%. And knowing 100% means that faith is no longer involved in something. So if you have to know, you have to give up faith, which is always an interesting discussion for people. So
Mm-hmm.
let's see if we can get John back. I wonder if can you hear us, John? John? No. All right.
Well, in fact, we're having a lot of uncertainty as to whether the three of
Yeah.
us are going to be here
And
today.
even be on a StreamYard together.
Yeah.
But Stacey, you've lived a life of uncertainty, as have I, and as have John. But you've lived that life differently than John and I have, because we don't have OCD and you do. So, as a person with lived experience, how do you describe uncertainty for you with OCD versus what you see now working with people who don't have OCD?
How many 4-letter words am I allowed to use?
Go. I don't care. The whole night's screwy anyway, it seems.
Yeah.
No.
No, uncertainty is a very challenging thing when you have OCD, because that's all it wants. And it says if you just get this answer, it will be okay. Just get the answer. Do whatever you have to do. Seek reassurance. Google it. You'll get the answer. And then you get an answer and it says, "Are you sure?"
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that's the right answer. That might be a answer, but look, there's another answer over here. So no matter what you do, you get on this wheel that you just can't get off of, and you're constantly seeking something that you can't have, which is certainty.
Right. Oh, look, he's back. Hey, John.
Switch devices.
Very good. Yeah, so we were continuing on what you were saying, John, about certainty, and Stacey comes in with lived experience of OCD and substance use, and I was asking her, what's the difference of uncertainty? And the reality is there's not a difference of uncertainty. There's a difference in perception of uncertainty in many ways in these situations. And so, Stacey, as you went through treatment and learned how to live with OCD without using substances and other coping strategies, how did your relationship with uncertainty change?
I'll let you know.
That's a fantastic answer.
No, but I started to understand that the search for certainty is the problem itself, and that wanting that certainty and needing that certainty was in fact the problem. And if I could accept the fact and become willing to accept the fact that I was never going to get certainty in any area, didn't matter what the intrusive thought was or what compulsion you tried to use to overcome it. OCD wants one thing, more. Substances, you want one thing, more. And you get caught on that rabbit wheel. But there really is a shift in thinking. It's not so much that my desire for certainty went away, because I think as human beings, we all have a certain desire for certainty, even though most of the time we don't get it. But how I respond to those thoughts is what changed with treatment and time. And so now I realize, I like it. I'm not going to get it. So what am I doing today besides compulsing or using to hide the anxiety and the negative emotions that come with the intrusive thoughts?
Right. And with the question there, eternity may be at stake, but it may not be also. We don't know. And as John, you like to say, we don't get to know either, right? I mean, on some of these things.
Yeah. I have 2.5 thoughts.
All right.
Two of them are quotes. one was triggered by Stacey. You almost quoted David Bowie perfectly,
Oh,
who in a quote said, "The search for certainty is the road to insanity."
there we go. Okay.
You know,
I've
and the
traveled that
classier
road.
way, yeah,
0 stars. Do not recommend.
right. Pema Chodron, the Buddhist nun, like the nice version of Patrick and me, to the extent we stop struggling against uncertainty and ambiguity, to that extent, we dissolve our fear.
There we go.
The half, that's maybe the important part. The thing that makes uncertainty difficult to accept is I am saying I'm going to be willing to cope with my life if the worst thing happens. You know, now the thing is, people act like they have a choice. I remember saying well, this one's a little funny. I'll take it slightly easier one. There was one guy in a support group who was, in the support group, and he was talking about his obsession where he's worrying about his cat's going to die. And I said, well, your cat's going to die someday before you, your cat's dying before you. That's happening. And like shock, now in this case, it worked out really well because he'd never put it that way. I mean, it's obvious, but he put it that way because it's like, you don't have a choice. It doesn't matter how awful the uncertainty is. It may be, now, what may be variable is the probability, but it doesn't matter. The worst things can happen. And I think coping with uncertainty is saying, no matter how awful it is, I hope that I will try to cope with it in a positive way. And positive doesn't mean I'll enjoy it, and just to be painful, Patrick, right, as everybody listening to this knows, you lost your wife. It's not, coping with it doesn't mean like, oh, and it's okay. It's really painful, but it also means, life, you're doing two things. Life is going on. And so I think when I don't want to cope with uncertainty, it's like, that can't happen. It's like, well,
Yeah.
unless you're dumb, yes, it can.
Right. Well, yeah. And, and Stacey, and John, if you haven't seen some of the stuff Stacey and I've done, but Stacey, you have OCD, you have substance abuse, you have albinism, you're legally blind. I mean, one could say you were dealt a difficult hand, and yet look what you do for a living, right? You work for the VA, you help people, you counsel people, you use your life experience, and no matter what life has handed you, you have worked and put yourself to the top as much as you possibly can. Which, as much as I can't stand you, I love you at the same time. No, but I think you truly are an inspiration for the OCD community, because when people talk about, oh, this is the worst thing ever, I'm like, have you talked to Stacey at all? Because she could tell you about even more things that she's had to go through and also deal with these things as well. So, and I'm not saying that it's a competition whatsoever.
No. But yeah. Sometimes I feel like I lost the acronym lottery.
Yeah.
I got a lot of acronyms.
But I think Patrick is right that you're an inspiration, because there are a lot of, I hope I can cope if something really difficult happens, and but I'm lucky that I have not been tested. But one reason for me having hope is that there are people, and you happen to be one of them, who have coped with really horrible things. So knowing that lets me know at least what I'm hoping for is possible. I may not be able to do it as well as you, but it's not a crazy thing. So I always take some solace that, okay, somebody's gone through this, so I have a shot that maybe I can also. I interrupted you, sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. It really is. I mean, sometimes people ask me, like, how do you deal with being legally blind? I'm like, simple. I didn't get a vote. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
I didn't volunteer, people. Okay. So, but life comes at you fast. One of my favorite T-shirts that I'll wear until it's thread says, "Life's hard. Wear a helmet." You put one foot in front of the other. And Patrick's heard me say this before. The person that the OCD community met at conferences and on these webinars is the person in recovery from substances, from, OCD, from PTSD, who's very comfortable with, who I am, my vision. As a matter of fact, when we were talking about uncertainty, what went through my head is, you want to talk about uncertainty? Patrick can walk down the hallway 20 feet and I'm uncertain he exists.
Right.
But the path to recovery was a path. It's a journey. And sometimes you make some progress and sometimes you take a step back. And sometimes you make some progress and sometimes you take a step back. But you want the step backs to be smaller and smaller because every step back there's a price to be paid, particularly with a substance abuse. I've watched so many people over, my years of recovery who took a step back, who didn't get to take another step forward. So you want those times to be smaller and smaller, but you also don't want to beat yourself up when they come, because recovery is a journey, more of a helix. Sometimes you go up the helix and sometimes you go down the helix. It's never a straight path, at least not from most of the people I know, especially if you're dealing with multiple things. Stress increases, symptoms of OCD, and stress increases symptoms of craving. On the SUD side of the fence, we know that the cortisol stress hormones increase cravings for substance use disorder. So, and similar mechanisms happen around stress and increasing some OCD symptoms. So when people are saying, oh, my OCD symptoms are coming back, one of the first questions I ask is, have you maintained time in your life for self-care? Are you maintaining that balance that allows you, or are you going to work and adding this and adding that and adding that? And one of the things I like to say is, don't let the gifts recovery has given you pull you backwards. You're probably going to have some time in your life for a recovery process, and that's going to look different for everybody. But you need to learn to manage stress, anxiety, and life events in a more mindful way than somebody who doesn't have OCD, or somebody who doesn't have a co-occurring OCD, SUD, or OCD, PTSD, because you need that time.
There's someone who asked the question, is there anything in the world that is certain? Please justify. I think we're all going to die.
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain on that one.
But I'm sorry, I'm a pain in the ass. Like, we know that. I will say,
I'm
with
fully
regard
aware
to dying, I agree, highly probable. But until I die, it's not definite.
Right.
I mean, so if I'm betting money, oh yeah, that's my bet. But low probability events happen. So, it's a great bet to assume I'm going to die. But like, what is actually definite? I don't know.
Well, I'm actually, I'll go with Patrick. I'm certain I'm going to die. The only thing I'm not certain about is the stories they're going to tell after I die. So I'm working on them daily. I want to make sure they're good.
You could be certain about a few stories that someone's going to tell. I think you could be pretty good. But no, really, I mean, unless the science comes up with a way to live eternally, I'm with John.
You think I'm going highly probable, but but 100%. I mean, it's just like, are there other dimensions we can end up in? Well, there are physicists who say that, so it's like, all right, I get, but the odds of me ending up in one of those seems slim. Quantum mechanics is crazy when it predicts about reality, right? But hey, there are physicists who believe that. Like, great for science fiction, but wait, there's actually science for that. So, the world is splitting off at every moment into multiple dimensions. And how come I'm in this one and not one of the other ones where I'm doing something different? that is apparently a really possible explanation in physics of reality. That sounds impossible, but then physicists say it. So,
hey, if physicists
so clearly, there's one in which I live forever, because there's so many of them that's bound to happen. There's also a study that suggests the odds are that we're living in a simulation. That they did some statistical analysis. I can't remember the reference, but the odds that simulations would exist are really high given the size of the universe. And so given that simulations exist, the odds that we're in the real one are low. However, I can't pierce that veil currently, so I'm going to act like all this is real.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing to be gained to try to figure it out. But so as many people have suggested, I don't know anything for certain.
Yeah. So if you guys saw anything that you liked, that'd be fine. Some people are asking about. Oh, go ahead. Did you?
No, I'm just saying I'm on a different device and I can't quite see the chat.
Oh,
so
okay.
I will rely on you guys.
All right. Awesome. Stacey, was there anything you're interested in, or I can just pick some?
Keep going.
Right.
I'm reading.
There's a couple of people who have asked about how do you do ERP for OCD alone, right? And John, you were kind of instrumental in developing goals groups. So I wonder if you could maybe talk a little bit about that, because maybe some people can't afford therapy, but they still want to get some help. There's some good self-help books out there. You've got a book out. So maybe you could talk about the evolution of goals groups and what they do.
I mean, there are two issues, right? I mean, I do think it's very hard to do ERP alone, without guidance. So, but I mean, certainly it's possible, as you mentioned, I have my favorite self-help book, but there are, self-help books that provide a lot of steps to try to follow. And then there are additional resources where I could get some advice, right? I mean, there are places like this. Now, I understand not everybody gets their question answered. And depending where you are, there are often support groups. Some of them are online or not. I would be wanting to look for a good support group. And I don't know if you want me to keep describing what I think I mean by that or what.
I mean, we can move on, but people can at least know there are goals groups out there. They can go to the International OCD Foundation. They can see where groups might be located. And that way, and many of them are free or very low cost if you want to join one. And that would be something.
Briefly, just since you're bringing up goals, I'll just be the 30-second description.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because in developing a support group, it was really important to me that the support group did not become a pity party where people just come and complain, because I think there are groups that can be destructive. So basically in the goals group, we did three things. We always have some prompt for everybody to talk about, because people want to talk about OCD, but they might need some direction. And on the OC website, there is somehow, it's not easy to find, but there's my goals manual for free. And there's a whole list of questions you can use for prompts, so you don't have to come up with them. The key, though, is picking goals, which was picking something that you're going to do as kind of exposure response prevention light between each group, so that every group, so you're always doing something positive to work on your OCD or implement it. That I could talk about for 10 minutes, but we're not going to do that now. But just so that the group that was positive, that we're always moving forward, and it becomes a little bit of a matter of you're going to get out of it what you put in.
This is an interesting question, and I debated doing this one because I don't want to answer it for reassurance questions, but I also think that this comes up, and I'd like to dispel a myth about what we're looking for in ERP. So I'll read the question and see what both of you think. Can ERP for subtypes of OCD, like say pedophilic OCD, sexual orientation, train your brain to like these things, and because you do them day after day? And I brought this up again because I want to dispel the myth that I'll say for me, my goal of doing ERP isn't to get anybody to like anything. It's about to be able to handle whatever pops into our head and be able to go, okay, and then be able to live with that experience and move on and live the life we want to live and not the life that OCD wants us to live. But I've never hoped for anyone to enjoy anything that pops in their head, no matter what it is.
And
I
if you're
think,
doing ERP for it, the chances of you enjoying it, yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah, no.
but you know, I think, and I think the answer is it's going to be odds. I suppose everything's going to happen at some point. To date, I have not seen that outcome doing ERP, and you know, I've only been doing ERP since 1978.
So just for a little
No,
while is what you're saying.
yeah,
Just-
yeah. So it seems a low probability event. And on the other hand, the odds of your life being a complete disarray and nightmare of giving into OCD, those odds look really high. So it doesn't make sense to ruin my life for something that's not likely to happen. Because if I can't do ERP for this low probability event, well, you have to stop driving a car. Because
Right.
odds of a car crash way higher and reasonable. So if you don't want to ever have a car crash, you have to stop driving. Because you know, why would you drive to a restaurant and risk death? That's crazy. So I think it's a matter of odds. It's like, it's possible. We haven't seen it, so we don't worry about it. You know, I think
Yeah.
that, you know, again, everything is odds. That's a low probability one.
Stacey, we've had an interesting discussion with each other. One of the things that you love to do is go hiking.
Mm-hmm.
You are legally blind, Stacey.
Really?
I don't know if you knew that
Yeah.
or not, but I'm just telling you, just in case you knew. But I think people would hear those two things sound rather diametrically opposed to each other. And I'm wondering if you could talk about how do you do that behavior without the vision that people who are fully, you know, they could fall and they could trip on something and everything like that. How do you manage that?
I very clearly remember being on a hike with a new group of people.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, you know, I will step on something and my foot slides a little bit because it's angled or it wasn't, you know, as firm as I thought it was. I've developed a way of, you know, trust but verify before I take another step. But when I try to verify and my foot goes like this, everybody behind me went,
Mm-hmm.
I just said, you know, people, calm down. You'll get used to it. After a couple of miles, you're going to be fine with this.
Exposure works.
Yeah, it does. You'll habituate to it, you know, or become willing to put up with it, whichever track you like to take. But really what it is you can have a struggle and still do a thing. They're not mutually exclusive. And I think a lot of people wait until they feel completely better. You have to take your thoughts with you on throughout your day, whether it's going to work, getting on a bus, going on a hike, going skydiving. You take your thoughts and your experiences with you. Some days they'll be more challenging and some days they'll be less so, but you know, you don't stop trying to move forward, because when you get on that wheel, that hamster wheel of looking for certainty, and I'll do something when my OCD is quieter or when my anxiety is lower. That's like me saying I'll do something when my vision is better.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. So I decided I'd rather be out there taking some risks. And yeah, guess what? I have one or two ER bills, you know, but I had a lot of fun. And going back to that certainty around dying, those are going to be great stories that people tell about me.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
You know? But it's building a life around your circumstances, not waiting for them to completely change before you decide to try to move in a different direction.
Was substance use a way to avoid that reality at all?
Oh God, yes.
Mhm.
I've said many times on this channel,
Mhm.
I found alcohol and then later other things, but I found alcohol first, and I found my best friend. It was the first time my brain shut up. I was like, ooh,
Mhm.
that's fantastic. But just like OCD, it's short term, and it will always lie to you. It says, "Oh, one more day, one more night, one more drink, one more drug. You know, I'll take care of all your problems." And it, the problem is, it does shut down your brain. So you feel like you're getting something. It's like compulsions. They deal with the anxiety on the short term, but as you use, I became less effective in my schooling. I didn't show up for friends. I didn't show up for family. Um, I became emotionally blunted.
Yeah.
So I've got all these other things that came into my life that weren't there in the beginning. It's like I had anxiety, but then I added alcohol and drugs and substances. So, you know, a couple years down the road, I had anxiety, I had OCD, I had PTSD, I was flunking out of school. I, you know, wasn't living at home anymore because it became, you know, behavior problem. And I had all these things going on and it solved nothing. The compulsions didn't solve anything. The alcohol didn't solve anything. So it's a big old lie.
Yeah.
And that's what they both do. That's one thing OCD and SUD have in common. They both promise you something that you will never deliver on.
And there's some back and forth in the chat, Stacey. So I'm so thrilled to ask you this question. People are asking, can kratom be good for OCD?
Can what?
Kratom.
You want to tell people about kratom, Stacey?
The problem is legal does not equal safe. And
Yeah.
this is a problem that people have. Alcohol is legal, cigarettes are legal, vaping is legal. And kratom is unfortunately legal. However, and this is one of those people, like I will always get an outlier that says, I don't have any withdrawal symptoms from kratom. Great. You are like 1 out of 100. Kratom acts in the body the same way as an opiate. So it doesn't matter if you are using kratom, heroin, or Oxycontin. That's why it works. I've been hoping that the FDA will catch up with this and get it off shelves. It's, and you guys know, I am not someone who's like anti alcohol or marijuana or anything. I just say everybody individually has to look at what is the reason you're using. If it's to control anxiety, to control obsessions, to reduce compulsions, then you are putting a Band-Aid on a bigger wound. And it might work for a little while, but it will not work forever. And then when you try to go get help for both of them, you're going to run into a larger problem.
Mhm.
I did alcohol and opiates were my two biggest things. I smoked enough pot to kill somebody, but and both of them shut my brain down. It took away the anxiety. It took away the obsession. It took away the PTSD. It took away all the anxiety symptoms. It did what I wanted it to do. But as I said, it dragged behind it a whole new set of symptoms, a whole new set of problems, and, an inability to show up. And I've had people challenge me on this going, but I still go to work and I still go to family events. Yes. But do you have the full range of emotional availability? Physical availability and emotional availability are two separate things. And even if you can maintain physical availability, substances will drain your emotional availability.
Mhm.
Stacey, you'll love this thing that Liz McInvale says about treatment. She likes to ask people, are you doing treatment to function or are you doing treatment to be free? So treatment to function is basically I'm forcing myself to do exposure and I'm not really working on uncertainty. And she lived a lot of her life that way. And she, you know, she functioned a lot and she moved ahead and she said, but life was whack-a-mole, you know, and it wasn't until she then went to that next step. And you know, it really makes sense. You know, there's a difference between when I'm using drugs that way, I am teaching myself I can't handle anxiety. So I'm actually becoming more unable to cope with anxiety. And I'm teaching myself uncertainty should be avoided. So I'm becoming less able to cope with uncertainty. So, you know, as you're saying perfectly, right. In the short run, and a very short run in the beginning, you know, it feels good and often it may keep feeling good, but I'm losing I'm losing functioning and I'm certainly not free, you know, and it's great. So I can be a functional drunk. Preferably not a way to live. So yeah, doing treatment to be free.
Yeah, I like that. Is OCD ever cured?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to rule your life.
Yes.
There we go.
So
Yes.
I can live comfortably. I might slip sometimes, but slipping doesn't mean I go back to the hell of my worst. It means, you know, in the ideal, it's a little slip and it sucks, you know, and maybe I did the wrong thing and didn't jump on it as quickly as I could. So I have to work a little harder, but I never have to go back to hell. So, and so that's sometimes a difficult thing to accept. It's like, but I don't want to have to live with it forever. And,
too bad.
Yeah. Well, like I said, Vision did not get a vote.
Yeah. You can blame your parents because they had the wrong genetics. So,
Oh,
you know,
God. Well, don't go down that rabbit hole with me.
So
Yeah,
they picked the wrong parents to have when they were born. They should have picked different parents.
There you go.
Yeah.
I like to ask the definition of cure too, because if cure means you're never, as what many people with OCD would like, you're never going to have a thought or image or urge that you don't want. Well, no, because people without OCD also have thoughts and images and urges that they may not want, right? So then we would have to figure out a way to make those go away for everyone. And you know, John, you and I talk a lot about the word intrusive. I was doing a talk earlier today, and people were bringing that up a lot. I said, "Do you consider the happy thoughts that randomly occur in your head to be intrusive?" And they said, "No, not at all." I said, "Why? They're an outlier, just like the ones you don't like are. So why are the ones you don't like intrusive, but the ones that you do like absolutely fine, right? Maybe they're just a spectrum of thoughts that we experience."
Things that interest us.
Yes.
Because whatever your intrusive thought, there's probably a TV show or movie based on that somebody's made a lot of money on that thought because they were willing to think it through, and everybody else is having the thought because they want to watch it. If only you would do that, you'd be rich.
Let's see. Gosh, there's so many.
There was one on here that.
Okay, go ahead, Stacey.
Well, it just somebody asked about, you know, a loved one with OCD who doesn't seem to want to engage in treatment, and you know, that can be hard, especially when they're an adult and they get to make their own decisions. You know, so there's a book out, When a Loved One Won't Seek Mental Health Treatment, that
Alec Pollard and group just put out. Yes.
Yes.
Very excited.
You know, I don't get any kickbacks for that. He's an extremely good therapist and author. That might give you some insights and ideas more than I can do on this, but it's a very frustrating thing when you really want your loved one to get better and engage in treatment and they're not interested.
I think he does an incredible job of explaining the problem, and
Yes.
helping someone, because he looks at it from a slightly different perspective. But the thing that's hard for all of us, if somebody asks me that question, what can I do? And it's like, wow, if I actually know the answer, because I mean, the book doesn't say here are the steps to follow, because it can't do that, and there are a lot of decisions to be made, and these decisions may or may not help the person, so it's like, you can help your life, maybe. Will their life be helped? And that's a maybe. It's a really awful situation that, I wish at those times when I asked that, I'm asked that at a convention or a talk, it's like, I have this person, it's like, what can I do? It's like, if I can answer this in 2 minutes, let alone if I, talk to you for 3 hours, that's pretty good. I can come up with some suggestions, but we really can't guarantee that we can talk the person into it.
Right.
No.
Alvaro says, does that mean that people without OCD can deal with anxiety better than people with OCD? No, because people without OCD might have panic disorder or social phobia or agoraphobia or all sorts of other things. Or they might just feel like their life is a mess and that they're really depressed and down and about things. So we are not here comparing anyone to anybody else, right? We know that
Well,
OCD.
I want to compare.
Go ahead. What do you want to compare?
I find that my clients, and I've said this before, who have overcome OCD, are way better at handling uncertainty than the average person. So they come in way worse, for sure. But when they've gone through treatment and they've handled OCD, the rest of worries of normal life, they are better than their families. And the place we saw this most was during the pandemic, where I had people who were coping with OCD and were like, my family's like crazier than I ever was. They're doing this and that, because the average person is really good at denial. And I think when you have OCD, you get heaven or hell. You don't get to do denial. Either you get hell for trying to avoid it, or you learn to cope with it. So I think the average person is not that good at coping with it. So the consolation prize of having OCD and going through treatment is you get to be better than everyone else. And although, you would prefer not to have the situation to start with, I think since you've got the problem, you might as well take the prize. So yeah, I think actually you get to be better than average if you go through treatment.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty awesome.
I know. I was thinking Stacey's like an example of that.
Wait, it'd be hard for me to admit that Stacey's better than average. I don't know. I have to think about that one. But
You
that's
think
just
long
you
and
being
hard
difficult,
about
though.
Yeah. We've already got it on video. You both complimented me, so we're good.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I know. We did that. John's chair seems to be falling apart. Something's going on.
A wheel just fell off my chair. So now,
Man, you were having a rough night, John. I don't know.
I know. So I had to get in a position where the chair doesn't fall over. So I was trying to get in a position where I wouldn't fall down. So it's teetering precariously. And the good or bad news, if I fall down, I'll smash into the desk. So you'll get to watch that. But you're in LA, Alex, so you can come. I mean, Alex, Patrick, so you can come save me.
There you go. I'll come
save me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good one. How does OCD grow into depression? I wouldn't say that OCD grows in depression. Here's my take on it. OCD attacks the things that you love and enjoy, right? And it gets you to have doubts and uncertainties about them more so than what you would normally have. And it makes it very difficult to deal with it. And therefore, you may do the safety behaviors to deal with it. You may avoid that. You may seek reassurance. You may distract. You may use substances. You may do compulsions. Look at the definition of depression, which is 1, I feel depressed, or 2, I've lost interest or pleasure in things I once enjoyed. Well, if OCD is attacking things that you enjoy and you don't engage in them anymore, it's not a hard leap to think why you wouldn't be depressed about something because you're no longer getting the enjoyment of life out of it because OCD's attacked it. So that's one of the ways that I talk about the relationship with OCD and depression. How about for the two of you?
Well, I always say that it makes your world smaller And that's true of OCD or SUD. It makes your world smaller where you're not engaging in those things. And what ERP and treatment does is allow you to push back and reopen your world. And when you do that, the symptoms of depression often are reduced or go away.
And to add to that, I think OCD and depression are both learned and biological disorders. I can be depressed because life sucks. So OCD certainly helps life suck. But I think there can be a biological part of depression. In fact, for me, and if you think about it, the drugs that work on OCD happen to be an antidepressant. So for me, and I find that the learned part of OCD, the learned part can override the effects of the drugs, which is why the drug can be working, but like they're not seeing any benefit. So I can tell if an OCD drug is working if it's affecting depression. If it's affecting the depression, then I know it's working on OCD. Now, if they're not doing ERP, they might keep doing all this stuff and say it's not working at all because, yes, I have to do the ERP also. So I think the two are biologically related because so many people have a depression that responds to the SSRI. That they'll feel like, yeah, I'm not as depressed. Because I'll have people, again, come in and say, the drugs don't work, I'm still OCD. And I say, like, are you less depressed? It's like, oh, well, yeah. Like, okay, then this particular one's working for you. I just make it complicated.
Yeah, you always do. But that's okay. That's why you're here. This is a fun one. How do you stop mental compulsions that are so quick and subtle?
I think we have to know what they are and why I need to stop them and what they're doing. I mean, I understand the concept, but and again, it's not so much stopping them as how am I going to handle them differently.
So if it's actually gone to a compulsion, it's not just an obsession, but it's gone to a compulsion, and it just seems to be so automatic that it occurs. One of the things that I would want to do with someone would be, even if it's happened, right, and it's occurred, and it's so quick, what can you do to undo it once you've done it, right? What is the thing that you can do to bring discomfort, uncertainty back into it? So there's this thing, and maybe it's caught me off guard, and boom, that mental compulsions happen. But then I notice it, like, okay, wait a minute. I'm going to go back to the thing that triggered it and rethink that or re-image that or have that urge again purposely, and now be with that experience. And even if I can put a couple of more milliseconds in before that happens, great. I'm working on that. And if it happens, I'm going to do it again. And that's the work that I'm going to try to do with someone. So I may not be able to stop it right off the bat, because it is so automatic, but I can teach people to respond different to it after it's happened and do something so that hopefully it leads it to happening less in the future.
Yeah. And for some, I can do interfering behaviors, not around the clock. I mean, like, if somebody has an automatic counting ritual where they're just like constantly counting to 3 on different things. I mean, 1, 2, 3, that can be pretty quick. So I may try to have them do something, verbally out loud that's going to interfere with that counting, right? Somebody who would stare at things in a certain way where they would see the world vertically and they would always like line up 3 points. And if you move something, it didn't matter because she would instantly replace it with something else. So what we would do when we needed 2 people to do this, I would walk her and she'd have her eyes closed and she'd open her eyes for 1 second and close them. And and then close them for 5 seconds. We would walk around like that. And after doing that for 20 minutes, it temporarily left. It was like, oh, that's how people, like, it was so automatic. Like she didn't even have the experience of seeing the world because it was always, and that was always there. Obviously, you can't do that around the clock, but practice that kind of broke that automatic ritual that, her eyes just automatically set up those 3 odd things in the room. So I think if we know what it is, we can find some way to practice interfering, including what you said, because, right, what is the ritual doing? Is the ritual fixing something, or is it literally just this aggravating automatic thing? that's mental and we can do something about it. Yeah.
Stacey, for you, were there mental compulsions that you had to deal with like this?
Yes. And I gotta say, I was fascinated by the fact that, they're like, what do you do with the fast automatic ones? And I thought, if they're fast and automatic, they're not really a problem. It's the ones that stay and move in and, have full on conversations with me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my initial thought was, well, if they're fast and automatic, but I get the context now and automatically going into compulsion. But yeah, again, thoughts are thoughts. We're going to have them. They're going to come in. And the question I would have is this something that's catching you off guard? Because for me, and again, I'm fairly long in the recovery process, so I kind of knew what I was going to wake up to every day because I was consistent. So I didn't have a ton of changing themes like on a dime. If it changed themes, then I had a whole new 6-month run with something. So once you get to know the pattern of OCD, the content is less important because you can identify it for what it is, and then you can address it either with ERP or a willingness to take the thought with you and go on about your day. But it's identifying the pattern of OCD, because there is a pattern, and once you identify it, more often it becomes more of a plug and play. If you're going to do exposure, it might look a little different. But the other part of that is you have to be committed, because if they're mental rituals or compulsions, you're the only one that can see them. So there's a bit of self, regulation and honesty. Are you really doing the response prevention, or, have you switched to a different ritual? Like you stopped doing that one, but now you're doing this one.
Yeah. The reply from the person who wrote it, Gabriel, says, isn't undoing the compulsion engaging with it? And do I have to do that every time? Well, the compulsion's been done, right?
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're trying to remove the relief that the compulsion has brought about from the obsession by having you go back to the obsession and allow yourself to learn you can handle the discomfort of the obsession without having to do a compulsion. So that's why we're doing this, right? That's the whole
Right.
concept of response prevention.
We're not really undoing it. We're
Correct. Nothing is
re-triggering your
undone.
fear. We're re-triggering your fear.
Correct.
I understand theirs may be very different, but if it's some automatic thought about they don't want people to die, and so the exposure would be like, yep, my mom might die. My wife might die today. I can say so. A lot of cases where I can say the triggering thing, so I'm not actually undoing it. There is a small group who will obsess about treatment, so they can't
Yes.
figure out whether treatment is a ritual or not.
Right.
In those cases, I have a way of coping with that. I have my favorite my favorite random number generator, Roundum, which is and we use Roundum to decide whether they ritualize, whether they do exposure or nothing. So I never have them ritualize. But like, should I do this, or is it a ritual to do? It's like, and Roundum decides. Roundum decides, like, I'm not going to do exposure right now. I am going to do exposure now, so they don't have to obsess. Is this treatment or not? And the obsession of like I have to do treatment perfectly or not. It's like, oh yeah, we're confronting that because we're not doing treatment perfectly. By doing it imperfectly, we're being perfect, and I can, you can fix the odds with Roundum. I can make it like exposure happens 2/3 of the time and 1/3 it won't. And Roundum is God, so whatever Roundum says.
Mm-hmm. And Gabriel says, thank you very much. She's one of the ones that obsesses on treatment. So you hit a nail on the head there, John. Very good. Yeah. one person says, "Sir, everything in the world is we said everything's uncertain," but they say, "I know I'm from India. I know it's true. So explain that." Right?
I have no doubt they believe they're from India. And you know what? I agree that's highly likely to be true. I believe it, and the idea that they are living in a matrix-like world, so everything's not real. So although they believe they're in India, but they're actually not, or are they actually psychotic and don't realize it? Those are all possibilities. So yes, I think it's highly likely you're from India. But if I want to look for what ifs, and the only thing is that doesn't concern you. So what I'm saying just seems silly. If your OCD was, how do I know what I know? Maybe I don't really know what I know. Oh, what I'm saying would be incredibly upsetting right now because,
Right.
the worst form of OCD is whichever one you're suffering from now. So,
Right.
if so I can ask what if about anything. And it's true. If I have OCD and I'm asked a what if that's not one of my problems, yeah, I don't care about that one.
Right. Carly had asked about helping a 25-year-old with contamination OCD. A, work with them on getting them to treatment, number one. B, if they're refusing treatment, that book that we talked about from Dr. Alec Pollard and the group that he wrote it with about helping loved ones who are refusing treatment could be a real help in that situation also. So there are more and more resources coming out all the time for that. And just a quick plug, one of the things we do is a No CD 411 session. So if you want to talk to one of us at No CD, we'd be happy to chat with you about how to talk to your child about OCD also. We've got 2 minutes left. Stacey, last words. What do you got for us tonight?
Well, just want to remind everybody about the special interest group for OCD and SUD. We have a website, which is ocdsud.com. We put up different resources there. Go check it out, take a look. And if there's an email, there's a contact us form. So if you would like to be added to the mailing list or you have a question about something you found there, you can use that, contact us, and email the question.
Awesome. John, any last words for you
tonight? This coming weekend is the IOCDF's virtual Einlon conference, where there are bunches of talks, and the talks are also available afterwards to listen to if you've signed up for the conference. So if you go to iocdf.org, there are bunches of talks that you can attend and talk to people. There is also, and there's still time to sign up, though it's running out, the IOCDF has offered free 20-minute consultations. And there's a sign-up list. So if you go to their website, I think you can find that. And I understand there's still space left to sign up where you can talk to a professional for 20 minutes. It is not doing therapy, so don't think of it as therapy. But, if you have questions, you could get some personal attention and discuss it with someone. So that's coming up this weekend, and you have till Friday to sign up for those. So jump right on it.
Fantastic. And tonight's webinar, again, brought to you by No CD. If you're looking for help for OCD or related conditions, check us out at nocd.com. And we do work with hoarding and BFRBs and tics and anxiety and OCD. And one of my favorite things are No CD 411 sessions as well. We'll be back again next week. Well, I'll be back again next week. And hopefully some of you will be here. I know it's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Busiest bar night of the world, but as Stacey and I would like to say, if OCD is involved, let's not use the substances as a way to manage any of the OCD, right? If you're going to be drinking, drink responsibly, because it's also, unfortunately, a night where there's a lot of DUIs and a lot of accidents, and we want to prevent that.
Uber,
we want you to be
Lyft,
safe.
Rideshare.
Use your ride shares, everyone. Just download that app and click a button, everybody. It's much better than the other alternatives and the consequences. So I will see you all next week. Thanks for joining. Have a great night, everybody.
A pleasure. Nice to meet you, Stacey.